All right, gang, aloha and welcome. My name is Ryan Kohatsu, and this is the first episode of my podcast. I've been kind of wondering on the name on this, but been kind of bouncing around. But I think I'm gonna name it the High Country Podcast. That's HI Country. HI meaning the male abbreviation for Hawaii, and country meaning kind of a play on words that I like to be in the high country that I grew up here up in here. In Hawaii. I think a lot of folks don't. Maybe you might see a lot of hunting and outdoor stuff in Hawaii, but you don't particularly maybe get to see all of the locals things. And that's something I want to bring here. This podcast is going to be geared toward mainly toward hunting, a bunch of outdoor stuff, some archery and shooting things, and also fishing. If I can get those guests on and those issues as well. Um, my goal with this is just to kind of have fun with it. I see a bit of a void maybe in what media is out there already on outdoor media from the islands in Hawaii, and I think kind of what you see on TV and some of the more popular things, that's one thing. But what I think what's missed is kind of what the locals get to experience, and that experience, which is I feel a different experience, the more public and general experience. So I want to celebrate those things and definitely try to create some awareness, education, and also um, just kind of getting everyone together, spreading information about it so that we can all kind of protect what we have, which is one of the goals that I have as well. And I'll get in a little bit about myself with this at the same time, but I work in a lot of hunter advocacy things for public hunting in Hawaii. And we're coming from the Big Island here. This is where I live. This is where I grew up. And public hunting in the islands is a unique thing. Something I think you don't get to see a lot of. What you see on TV is more private land, more exclusive type of hunts. I'm not saying I have anything against those things. They fill a certain void. They fill a certain part of an industry, and they create a value for our lifestyle and our community that maybe the public side can't do. But what I also feel is the public side is kind of what everybody else has to do. It's what recruits new hunters, what recruits new fishermen, and all those type of things. It's what keeps kind of the backbone of what the hunting and fishing community is built on. Um, you know, Not everybody can go spend $1,000 a day or what have you to go hunting. So the public opportunities are, to me, very special and kind of gonna be one of the higher priorities and focus that I have with this podcast. So I work in a lot of hunter advocacy, like I was getting onto, but in that hunter advocacy, I see a lot of challenges with public hunting in Hawaii, and it's not out there. We don't get to talk about it real deep. I think this podcast is a better venue to do that kind of thing, to express our ideas more completely, not so much in social media, one little snippet of a post or maybe a headline on the news or something like that. I don't think we get the full experience or the full as best as we can, all the information out there for people to get. So I want to do that with this podcast, and you know, onto the issues. We have unique hunting here in Hawaii. All of the animals that we hunt here are non-native species, and in the general sense, a lot of times these non-native species are viewed as bad by some of the conservation or preservation communities that we have, um, and I'm not going to deny any of that stuff. It's they can totally be detrimental to native species and ecosystems. But what I'm also going to say is that hunting these things and all of those has kind of given me the interest in the outdoors that I otherwise wouldn't have. And to be quite honest, we have a lot of landscapes in Hawaii that are very modified, very changed, and things. You can't always bring everything back to how it was 400 or 500 years ago or something. And I think what I'm getting at is that there is a within our public lands here in Hawaii, there's a competition for what policies and what land use practices are to take place on them. And part of that competition of all these interests of the public is that, the better funded interests in Hawaii kind of tend to be the more preservation, conservation, native species side stuff. And, things like fishing and hunting and the more public activities, they don't get as much. They get a lot of attention, but I won't say they have a lot of funding attached to them. So, we battle, our government battles these two sides, and typically, you gotta be honest, the side with the money wins usually. So out of that becomes a reduction of hunting opportunities here. A lot of our animals on public lands uh, do kind of get the eradication path, where you're not on public lands. It's just kind of frowned upon to conserve any of these animals or create a management plan that protects their existence into a long-term fashion. So we're allowed to hunt them in a lot of cases, and I'm talking public land, hunt them. And as long as we're kind of reducing numbers, that's okay. But if numbers are stagnant or maybe increasing in some fashion, I'm talking in a very general sense, there are a lot of specific different challenges in different areas, but in a general sense, this is the challenge that we face. So we're allowed to decrease them, but as you can understand, as we decrease them, we're getting rid of the resource, and in turn, we're going to be getting rid of the public hunting as well. So that's one of the challenges, just that biological and ecological challenge of keeping our animals here. I definitely like to work towards those things, and it's a huge challenge that just in the hunter advocacy things that I do locally, I really want to talk about. I want to get all of the projects, all of the kind of the history and things that we've done that really don't get out there to our public, our hunting community, really. And I think our hunting community as a whole is kind of left in the dark. They're left with a lot of questions of how come this is happening, or why this, or whatever. And usually there's a lot of history with that. And I want to get that out. So with that history and with that information, as a collective whole, we can make better decisions publicly, and hopefully, kind of all look in one direction to get things done. We're already a a small community compared to the other interests, that if we don't kind of narrow, or I don't want to say narrow, but if we don't kind of focus our efforts into the core things, and we're kind of all over the place, we're not going to get anything done. So that's the goal of this podcast as well. Get that information out so that we can make better decisions and really focus those things. So, kind of leading on more to about myself, I don't really know how to do a podcast. This is my first time. I want to do video like I have here. If you guys are watching it, hopefully on YouTube. And then, you know, I want to get information out on the archery and hunting and shooting stuff, just to get more people started. I can go deep in technical detail, or I can keep it light, kind of for the beginners too. I do want to cover that all. I really think the recruitment of new hunters is important, and that leads into my philosophy, I guess, of how I hunt. I'm really into the public land, kind of the public hunting. I'm a diehard DIY kind of person. Anyone that knows me, and I mean, you could say maybe because I don't have the money, and that's just the way I have to hunt, or but to be honest, I feel like even if I did have the money, I'm gonna seek those DIY opportunities, those do-it-yourself opportunities. I'm gonna seek those public opportunities. I really have a love of experiencing places and things, like just the way the locals have to do it. Um, and maybe there's a little bit of pride with that. When I get to talk about places I get to hunt, I want to talk about it in a way that the locals there can relate to. I don't kind of want to be viewed as this very exclusive person. It's because he got to do this fancy thing or this or that, and um, that's kind of not my style. But hey, if it's yours, I'm all for hunting. So do your thing. But this is mine. And with that, just kind of I just got off of a hunt with with a friend that contacted me through my YouTube channel, actually. Just a guy from Alberta, Todd. My guy's following on Instagram, probably saw some of those stories. I really like those semi-live hunts where you can kind of share what's going on. It's pretty pretty legit, and it almost feels like you're there with the person, So that's kind of cool. But yeah, this guy's from Alberta, and he wanted to experience. Um, he looked up the outfitters and things, and maybe it was out of a price range or something like that. But I think he really had the interest in and put value to doing things, how the locals have to do it, or kind of just sharing more of a friendly exchange versus you kind of pay somebody to go take you out. Maybe it's a little more genuine. Now, I'm not saying that what you pay for isn't genuine. It surely can be, but there's an opportunity that maybe it's more of a business than a genuine friendship. So here, yeah, he contacted me, came out, and um, kind of just took him hunting in the places that I hunt. And well, to be honest, I don't. I'm trying to go hunting more. I don't get to go hunting a whole lot, and it's just kind of a personal thing. I've been kind of just with the advocacy and trying to conserve what game resources we have. I have such a difficulty going hunting and taking them for myself. Might sound crazy, but I just know, like, I've been involved or know some guys that's been involved with some projects for the animals that we hunt, and it's really sad when these projects have fallen apart. And I just kind of see the hunting public here just going out there and killing them all, like kind of just doing what our opposition wants us to do. And I want to get that information and story out so that maybe people kind of have more thought about what they're doing, and as a community, we can kind of just do things ourselves. I mean, I gotta be honest. I've tried with our government and things like that. The other side, special interests, they just have a bigger influence, and it's really hard for us unless we all work together. So, um, yeah, and I don't think we're gonna work together so much if everyone doesn't have all the same information, all the same very factual information, instead of just people just kind of spreading rumor like we tend to do in Hawaii, a small community, and people just tend to talk like that. So, um, yeah, it's just a personal thing. So, but I'm trying to get out more, and on this hunt, I took him into Pu'uanahulu. It's one of the areas well, that we hunt. We typically have sheep and goats there. We used to have more sheep, but over the years, ecologically, we've had fountain grass growing, invasive weed, and a bunch of fires, and just like I said, this conflict between trying to keep our animals here because the environmental folks might say there's endangered species here or there, miles in, whatever, it might not even be within miles of the animals that we hunt or where they live, but they tend to have an influence on how we keep them, which would be kill them all. You guys can go hunt and get rid of them, but don't you guys do anything to conserve them or use them wisely in any sense or have a long-term goal for them. So, um, but we went on a goat hunt. There's a lot of goats on there. I don't think the goats are in a population trouble yet. There's a lot of adjacent private land to these areas, and the goats kind of seek refuge in there, and they go back and forth. So, but those private lands are maybe looking at development. Got some big roads coming up and things like that. So it may affect that hunting, but we did that. He got a nice billy on his first try. We had a little bit of mix up with I was using his rangefinder in the metric system, and looking at it, he had to yell at me. It was in meters because I couldn't believe what the rangefinder was saying. But did good, and then we spent some time up on Mauna Kea. Went on a pig hunt, and we recorded a podcast up there after he got his pig, and pretty cool hunt. It's at I don't know, about 8,500 feet or something like that. Kind of high elevation hunting for pigs, especially. The mountain goes all the way up to 13,000 feet, and hey, I used to hunt sheep up there up at 11, 12,000 feet at sometimes, and all of that is gone. That got eradicated. Oh, it's not totally eradicated, but it's pretty much all eradicated up there for the protection of the Palila finch bird. Back in 1979, there was a lawsuit that brought on against the state of Hawaii from the Sierra Club and the and the Audubon Society, and they basically the judge ruled in favor that the sheep were eating this certain momane tree, the forest that the Palila depends on, and by that the sheep was harming the Palila. I mean, it makes sense to me. It's fine. But the court ruling ruled that that the state had to eradicate all the sheep on that area. So they designated the whole mountain pretty much critical habitat, and then started flying aerially from 19 late 70s or so, up until now. So that's kind of reduced to nothing, almost nothing. Like they've got Judas collared sheep out there, and the helicopter goes to fly around and find them and shoot them. And even with that, they pretty low numbers they're getting on the aerial shooting more recently. So and then the result is the Momani forest is bigger today. I'm sure no scientist would argue that, but the Palila population continues to decline. We're talking like numbers were like in the 8,000s back in 2003, and then today here we are 2017 or 16. I don't know when the last count was. Those numbers were somewhere around the 1,200 to 1,500 number. So um, there hasn't been this direct correlation to the reduction of sheep population to the any increase of Palila. Maybe it takes time. Forest takes time. But like I said, the Momani forest is bigger than it's ever been because this has been a thing that we've been doing over decades, reducing that number. Um, yeah, and it continues to fall. And I didn't mention all the little itty bitty things in there too, like the bird kind of only lives in maybe 10 or 15% of the area of that mountain, and we spent a lot of time eradicating the whole thing. And um, man, it's just real tragic. So that hunting that I grew up with, how I grew up hunting, is all gone now, and I can say that for even a couple other areas that I grew up hunting, they're gone, and it's the same reasoning. These endangered species, and some of these other areas are even, I gotta be honest, even a little more ridiculous. There may be one or an individual of a dozen plants in here across maybe 20,000 acres or something like that. It doesn't take up a big area really, where these endangered plants live, but they go ahead and fence off 20,000 acres or whatever it is, and then mow down the sheep or whatever, and that disappears. So and quite honestly, some of these areas are highly modified. They're never going to be really realistically brought back to native as maybe the utopian view that those people who wanted it might have had. But you know that's the big influence. It's not perfect. It's all politics sometimes, and we're gonna talk about that in this podcast as well. I'm really hoping to get other guests on here that have worked in it for quite a while and maybe continue to work in it. Um, I gotta share some information too. I've been doing it for a bunch of years, and I just hit the roadblock. The endangered species lobby, that side of the special interest group, is really strong, and they got the law and everything, and just little reasonable things to even keep animals like in old cattle pasture, places that don't even matter anymore. And not even we're not talking about high numbers or anything, because personally, I want to see endangered species do well. I want to see forests. I want to see land managed for, decent ground cover and vegetation and all these things, and watershed and what have you. But, I think some of these places that are modified, we can actually have some kind of protein harvest off of it through hunting, and through that hunting also foster a lot of new relationships for people that otherwise wouldn't get outdoors. I think it's an interest that draws in more people, which I think is a good thing. If you have more people outdoors, then you have more people that are willing to understand or actually care for these public lands that we own. Maybe not develop them away, and create that lobby, I guess, that influence, that political sphere of influence for public land here. So I don't know. I just think any all of it's good, but I just feel like we're not optimizing. I think what we have with our hunting resources. Like when I hit roadblocks to even try to keep animals in places that don't matter, and the very same reasons are brought up. Oh, this endangered species might be 5 miles away over there, even though the endangered species might be fenced already, and that habitat may be fenced. Oh, this sheep or goat you're trying to keep here, Ryan, for 5 miles away, it might walk all the way over there and eat it all, that kind of thing. And it's just policy. It's some guy sitting in an office making these decisions or whatever, and that's politics. I can't get around that. They control it. But what I can do, which is what I'm doing right here now, is to let my community know, like, this is how it happened. This is what's going on. And maybe one of you guys out there is smarter than me or something, or you guys can organize better than I can and figure out what to do, because I feel like, I really do feel like in my lifetime, the public hunting system, especially the animals that I personally hunt, I hunt a lot more sheep, goats, and deer. I'm I'll be honest, I'm not much of a pig hunter with the dog stuff, but they are a huge hunting community here, and the areas that that land that type of forest covers that they hunt in is a big area, and their take of pigs actually is a amazing control measure, free control measure for hunting, which I think is not even optimized as well either. Of course, we should protect their interests, keep them around, but I also know that if the government had to do it instead, it might just go to crap. I mean, they just might not have the money to have that kind of take, and it feeds a lot of families, and I don't know, just get kids outdoors and families outdoors. I mean, it's not all. I'll be honest, it's not all perfect. Of course, we have our rotten apples, as any community does, but just in a general sense, talking kind of more politically in a general sense, everything is. I think it's good to have people out there, irrespective of what they're doing. So that's a little bit of my philosophy with it, and telling you the issues at the same time, mixing it all in. So yeah, what else about me? I do a lot of in my past. In college and things like that. Before that, I have a competitive rifle shooting career. I don't do that anymore. It's quite costly, but we can get into that. I can get into some technical aspects of how to shoot rifle and those type of things. I really got a love for archery. Bow hunting is one of my biggest passions. My preferred method of hunting. And yeah, I'm a engineer, a professional engineer by day job. So, I can hopefully I can bring a little bit of technical aspect to it. Not get too crazy with it, because I do want the beginners or kind of newer hunters or even fishermen to be not get scared, get out there. But I also know on the backside of all that, for new hunters and new fishermen to recruit into our community, that I think is so great. They got to have opportunities. So it's a responsibility, I feel, of people who are experienced like myself or anybody else that might be listening, that we have to, since we know, we have to protect these things for them too. We can't. I just feel like I can't just go out there and. We have a saying. All the uncles and the aunties over here in Hawaii, since I was a small kid, they always try to instill in us this: you cannot just take, take, take. You gotta put back. And to me, that means I've done a lot of hunting. I've been pretty much everywhere. And I've taken a lot. I've taken a lot away from hunting. It's enriched my life. It's changed the way I view things, and for life, forever. I mean, a lot of things I do, even just eating, lifting weights, or whatever, I'm always thinking about it in the context of how is it gonna help my hunting. And in that, I've taken a lot, but I do realize I have to give back as well. And I serve, like I said, serve in a hunter advocacy government. Also serve in the volunteer hunter ed instructor. But a lot of those things I feel are they're good things. They're within the system. But to be quite honest, that very system is the thing that is holding us back. And this, what I'm doing right now, this podcast, is that external influence, which is, I feel, missing, and something want to do and see if it works, and I hope it works for you guys out there. And yeah, if you have ways, like suggestions of how to make it better, or maybe topics that should be covered, or maybe something you don't know that you'd like to learn about, maybe it was a project. We had all kinds of hunter projects here in the past, Keomoku sheep relocation, stuff at Puwawa, Monica. I mean, you pick it. There's all these things, and if I don't know the answer, I'm sure I can probably find the guys who do. And let's get the facts out there, so that so we know, none of this rumor stuff. It doesn't serve our community any good to have rumors, and especially false rumors running around. So that's a bit of my history, and yeah, I don't know. I just love it a lot, and I think I want to do my part to give back, and this is another way. I may be phasing out just for myself what I do within the system. I serve on the state game commission for East Hawaii, and I may be phasing out what I do there. I feel like I know what the obstacle is, and I don't think that. I don't know. I don't think that avenue is gonna really address it by itself alone. It will address it when the time is right, but alone, I don't think it'll get it done. So um, I'm gonna do this kind of thing, interacting more with the public in this way, and hopefully have some cool guests that know more about some cool stuff than I do, and yeah, kind of elevate all of our knowledge base too as well, and have different experiences along the way. But other than all that, just talking about myself, and I didn't want to just bore you guys with that. I wanted to throw at least a tidbit of information for some folks that already do follow what I do. I do hunting videos and kind of self-filming things, and on YouTube you can check those out. And I don't know, it's kind of fun. Maybe it's a little different than a lot of other things. I kind of shied away from all that flashy stuff. I kind of like it more real. Um, not it's not exclusive. It's mostly, well, I think, yeah, pretty much mostly all public land stuff. You guys can all go out there and actually do the same thing, quite honestly, and that's the beauty of it all. And yeah, so in that, I get a lot of inquiries and questions, and some questions are all the same. Like, I want to come and hunt Hawaii. What do I look at? Or um, I do some traditional stick bow shooting. How do I do that? Because that's a whole another ball of wax. But one of those key things has been the cameras. So what am I filming with now? And what do I film most of my self film hunts with? And kind of considerations there. So I want to go over that, and I'll go over that here real quick. Unfortunately, I don't have the camera that I use the most with. But if you're watching this on YouTube right now, I'm filming this with a Canon XA10. It's it's like a consumer camcorder, but it has pro features on it. What I'm gonna tell you is, if you're getting into it, the sky's the limit. You can spend a lot of money, but I would say don't be afraid that you have to spend a lot of money to get decent results, because I found that's totally wrong too. You can get great stuff with some of the consumer level things that are out there. It's just learning how to use the functions and kind of using your creative eye. But that's a XA10 that you're watching me on. Um, what I film most of my self film hunts with is what we call a bridge type camera. A bridge camera meaning it's between a DSLR, interchangeable lens type camera, and a point and shoot camera, which is, your consumer camcorders, or any little power shot Canons or whatever cameras. So in that bridge camera, basically being in the middle, they tend to have long zoom lenses, and with that long built-in zoom lens, I can take the wildlife video of all the deer and the sheep or whatever coming in, and that's the footage you see on my YouTube. Anything that's really up close on the animals are highly likely done with my bridge camera. It's a Panasonic FZ300. It's I guess the updated model of the FZ200. You guys can look that up online. It's not crazy expensive. I don't know what they're going for now, maybe $500 or something like that. And it's, yeah, more than a low level consumer, but it's not a professional grade either. And the beauty of that camera, like I said, is that long lens, but it also has a lot of manual functions. You can get into the manual functions, and really that's where you're gonna unlock the power of the camera. You get great results with the auto, but if you want to kind of elevate your game on the image and what you can control, you're gonna want to learn the manual functions, and I'll get into some basic manual functions soon. But and then I do some still photography, and I take all of that with. I had a Canon 70D DSLR camera, but they get very big and heavy, and when you're self-filming and self-hunting, those things, I'm a small guy, I can't carry around a lot of weight, so I had to downsize and get smaller. So this is a Sony A5100 mirrorless camera. As you can see, it's really compact. It's an interchangeable lens, so it's really small. The lenses are small too. It's a crop sensor camera, APS-C size sensor. You guys can look those things up. That's irrelevant really. I think right now this model is really cheap, or if not discontinued already. Um, then you can get mirrorless cameras that are like crazy expensive, $2,000 and stuff. What I'm gonna tell you about still photography and cameras is, it's not the camera body that matters. The camera body gives you all these functions that may be faster, quicker, or whatever, but it's really the lenses where you want to spend. If you got to spend money on something, you can get a decent small DSLR or mirrorless camera. They're all pretty good already. but it's the lenses you want to focus on. Getting good glass is what's going to get you the better images. With bigger apertures, if you want to take low light or night photography, more manual lenses if you want to, like I said, work in the dark or things like that. And yeah, so focus there. This isn't crazy expensive, but you can see it's pretty small. And I typically carry those two. It'd be my bridge, my Panasonic FC300, and my Sony A5100. I'll typically carry on kind of myself, self-film tons. And there's nothing wrong with like the regular consumer camcorders as well. Those little ones that you see in Walmart or Target or whatever. They'll give you great results too. But yeah, learn to use the manual as long as you can. I would say if you want to have a limitless bounds in this, get a camera that can do manual functions, and those manual functions will be control of the aperture, white balance, shutter speed, um, ISO or gain. Uh, what else? I think those are it. So what I just explained, those are like the basic core functions. If you know how to use that on a camera, you know how to use any camera and how any camera works and can give you different results based on how you adjust those things. I'll get deeper into it. The aperture is just in in any of the lenses. As you can see, I got a couple. If you're watching on YouTube, I got another lens here and another lens here. My interchangeable lenses, a 50 millimeter, a 35 millimeter, and then this is a wide angle. I believe it's a 12 millimeter. But so like I said, it's not the body that really matters. It's the type of lenses that you get that will give you those images. Um, but getting into aperture, so aperture is typically a function of the lens, whether it's even built in on your camera. In like my bridge camera, it's a fixed lens, so I can't interchange it or anything. But aperture and the interchangeable lenses, they'll have f-stops. If you look real good, f1.8, f4, or whatever. That lower number typically means a larger aperture. So an aperture meaning that there's a hole in the lens that will actually adjust wider or smaller, letting in, controlling the amount of light that you have. And also, depending on how big the image sensor is on your camera body, it can also determine how the depth of field of your image is. So if you open up the aperture a lot, you'll typically get a more shallow depth of field. Those are images that you see where like the focus of attention is one thing all in focus, and then maybe there's a blurry background and blurry foreground, what they call bokeh. If you look, those will all be wide aperture lenses. So we're talking like f1.8, f2, f2.8, those type of lenses. And then with telephoto lenses, you can kind of go a little higher on those f-stop and kind of maybe get the same kind of bokeh result. But uh, that's one of the main controls of a lens or the camera is the aperture. It's controlling how much light comes into that hole and also the depth of field. The other thing I talked about was uh, white balance, which is the color. All cameras will have it. You want to adjust the white balance. It's like when you go in the evening, things tend to look a little bluish. When you come in the early morning, things tend to look a little warmer, a little reddish color. The white balance can adjust that camera accordingly so you can get colors more lifelike, or you can adjust them however you want them to look. So we say white balance because it's kind of saying that you're adjusting the camera to what is white is kind of what you're saying. So people may carry cards that are white, and you can adjust your white balance to that card. Okay, I got white, and that's what it is. Or some camera have presettings like daylight, cloudy, K temperature scales. The higher the temperature scale, the more warmer or reddish the picture will look. The lower the temperature scale, the more cooler, the more bluish the picture will look. So adjusting white balance is kind of another core function. If you don't do that, you can get your colors all wrong. Then the next one was shutter speed. Shutter speed is how fast does the camera shutter open and close. The faster the shutter speed, the less light it lets in, but you can capture quick motion. The slower the shutter speed, the more light comes in, the brighter the image, but faster motion may blur. Like the image that you're taking a picture of, the shutter will open, but if the thing is moving and the shutter doesn't close fast enough, you're gonna get kind of a motion blur on your image. This is for both video and stills. Typically in video, you want shutter speeds twice the frame rate, which is the next thing I'm going to talk about. Um, but if you slow down the shutter speeds, you can kind of get more of a motion blur picture. If you speed up the shutter speed in your video, you can get kind of a herky jerky, like things look like they're moving quickly. Maybe like when you see people dancing in a music video or things like that, that very quick jerk. That's probably done with a high shutter speed. And then in still photography, same effect. High shutter speed, darker image. Slower shutter speed, brighter image. When you take night photography, you could have shutter speeds as low as like 10 seconds, 30 seconds. The shutter opens for that long, gathering all that light, and that's how you can see like the stars in those images. Maybe even more than what the human eye can actually see. So that's one. And the next one I was talking about was frame rate. Frame rate is the how many this is purely for video. How many frames does it take in a given amount of time? Typically a second. I'm filming this in 24 frames a second. A lot of cameras film in 30 or 60 frames a second, and then you can get higher speed ones, the 120 or 90 frames a second type of thing, and those ones, those high frame rates are the ones you can capture quick moving objects and then kind of slow motion them down, play them, capture them at a high frame rate, and then play them back at 24 frames, a slower frame rate. So it kind of looks like normal motion, but you captured that quick motion in a normal video kind of thing. And the last one was, I believe I talked about gain or ISO. Gain or ISO is an electronic control of the camera body, both for still and usually for video. It's called gain in dBs, and in still pictures ISO it's in just numbers 100 to maybe 25,000 or whatever. The higher the ISO, it's increasing the camera's image sensor's sensitivity to light. But when you increase that sensitivity, or it could also be electronically uh, yeah, increasing the, I don't know how to say it, I guess, like digital zoom almost. You can optically zoom so far, you get the same picture, but when you start zooming into the pixels, you start getting this pixelating because you're just kind of taking that fixed image and then looking closer at it instead, and you're going to see the imperfections. When you put the gain or the ISO higher up to make an image brighter or making the camera sensor more sensitive, you're going to begin to see those imperfections. Or this is what you might see if you're trying to shoot video at night and the gain is up on your camera. You'll see like this grainy or sometimes like light snowy picture. So having the ISO or the gain too high can really degrade your image quality. But it just depends on what you're looking for. So if you want to take a photo or video in really low light, you're gonna need good ISO or good gain quality control or that kind of thing. So um, for typically, just in general, for the newbie that's using it and you're going into the manual functions, I would typically say you would adjust for the lighting conditions of your image with the aperture, your shutter speed, and those things first, and maybe your ISO and gain last. Because your ISO and gain will be, if you go too high, you're gonna degrade the image. Period. You're gonna get grainy stuff. But I would say don't be afraid to increase the gain or the ISO on your camera, because a lot of cameras today, they're very good at going up in those things, and it can give you more flexibility if you know kind of where that limit is. Like with my still photos, I don't like to go over maybe 1200 or 1600 on my ISO. Um, but if I need to take a night shot and it's a really dark night, I'll bump it up to the 3000 or whatever and get that shot. Maybe I can't use a full size picture. I kind of have to crop it, but it works. You can get it done. In the camera for video gain, typically, I think like on TV, they don't want to go over like 12 dB or something like that. Um, but for YouTube or whatever, consumer level stuff, you can go higher. Like you can go like 19, 18, and um, sometimes these cameras actually you can actually see more through them in the dark than your naked eye. And maybe you can get those low light shots or whatever when you're hunting, and typically when animals like to come out. So um, yeah, so I think those would be the main functions. And yeah, just word. I see, that's a big question, and I know a lot of people tend to think that, oh, you gotta have this expensive camera to get all this stuff, and I mean that's a lot of fancy marketing and whatever. Just like bow hunting and archery and guns or whatever, the next newest thing in the year is gonna get you this great result. But to be quite honest, don't let that price point or those things scare you away from just getting into it. Find an entry level one, kind of what I those models I said. I've had them for quite a while. I don't know what's kind of the newer stuff now, but yeah, don't be afraid to just pick it up and go. If you got a passion for it, just pick one of those up. Hopefully, it's got some manual functions, and just play with it and learn. And the greatest learning tool, honestly, you want to learn anything, just go on YouTube, type in what you want to learn, or type in cameras. I would caution, like anything on social media, which I see a lot of, and it just drives me nuts, is really vet your sources. So when you're looking at media on YouTube or whatever, Instagram, really look at that person that's putting out the content. Is it credible? Is it, does it have good reviews or that kind of thing? And um, use that. So look at that first. So you make sure you're getting good information, because there's a lot of stuff out there that maybe isn't so good. But yeah, get your personal filter out. Make sure it's good information, and yeah, type it in YouTube. Introduction to cameras, or video, or video edit. Oh, I didn't talk about that. Yeah, video editing. That's another one. I use Adobe Premiere Pro. I think that Apple has maybe more user friendly ones, like iMovie and Final Cut and stuff. Those are more user friendly than Adobe. But yeah, the only reason I got Adobe is because I don't have an Apple. Am I an Apple fan? I don't know. Not entirely. I'm not a fan of my iPhone. I kind of like my Samsung better. But yeah, the Adobe is more complicated. The Apple, I would say, is a lot more user friendly. But again, if you want to learn it, you get a passion for it, just go on YouTube, type it in, and find a reputable tutorial from a reputable guy posting, and you can learn anything, man. He can learn anything on YouTube. So do that, or even on the internet. And yeah, good luck with it. I think more of us putting good content. This is another thing, you know, uh, when you put stuff out there publicly, eh, YouTube, Facebook, so Instagram, whatever it is, it's for everyone to see. Especially if your privacy settings is to public. Understand that in today's world, social media, uh, we have this opportunity to be like little mini news stations of our own. And if we represent, we do hunting and fishing here on this podcast. If we represent that in a weird light, just understand that the majority of the public supports hunting and fishing. They may not understand it. 10% hunt, the 80% non-hunters, and then that 10% anti-hunter type of thing. Um, just know that that 80% that don't hunt. When we live in a democratic society, those people are the decision makers. They have the largest voting block. They get to decide what the laws and the policies are typically. And if they don't know stuff, so they're not gonna be attacking your hunting rules or that kind of thing. But if you put stuff that are on social media that are inflammatory, derogatory to the community, derogatory to the others, socially unacceptable, those things get attention. And typically, it's never great attention that makes the headlines. It's always the crazy stuff. And it's real sad. You see a lot of it in the hunting industry, right? Just a lot of blood, a lot of guts, a lot of gore. Do we need to do that kind of thing? I don't know. I don't do it. I don't think so. I don't think it'll reflect good on our community. So if you're gonna be a person that gets into that kind of thing, I would just it would just be my hope that you would take into consideration that your audience may not just be hunters. It may be that 80% non-hunters, and that content you put out there, if unacceptable, may sway some more of that 80% off to the anti side. And I don't think our community needs more people against us. So if you're gonna do that, understand you're an ambassador, just like all of us out there, and ethics do matter. So good luck with it. And if you got any other questions, I want to cover stuff. Like I said, I think the next episode out should be Todd's one that we did up on the mountain, hopefully. And hopefully I figured out how to use all this stuff. And yeah, I'm gonna try and grab some of my friends that have worked on past projects. Um, some cool hunting stuff. I don't have any trips planned, but maybe you guys out there do or have gone on some. And I definitely want to get those cool stories, those cool experiences out, and maybe share things that not everyone talks about. I just kind of want like reality out there, and it'll be good for all of us. So we're right here at about 45 minutes. I think that's a good place to stop. I've been rambling on. It's kind of weird just talking by yourself, but anyway, hopefully I can get you won't just have to listen to me all the time. We'll get some more interesting stuff. But aloha, guys, and take care. And you guys know where to find me on social media. So good luck out there and protect hunting. Aloha. Bye bye.